Another chapter in the South Dakota Showdown series has been written. How's everybody doing? I'm Jay Elsen, and this is Coyote Corner. Well, since the rivalry with South Dakota State resumed in 2012, Brookings has been especially unkind to South Dakota. In each of the previous two games, the Coyotes were shut out in the first three quarters and ultimately lost those matchups by a combined 46 points. Saturday, however, would be a much different story. South Dakota came in needing a win over the 11th-ranked Jackrabbits to keep their playoff hopes alive, but the Yotes once again fell behind early. Kyle Paris up the middle for a 3-yard touchdown, 7-0 Jacks. State looked to double that lead later in the first. Taryn Christian on his way to pay dirt, but Jacob Warner knocks the ball loose before he can break the plane. It rolls out of the end zone for a touchback, so the deficit stays at 7. Late first half now, Coyotes even things up. How about the catch here by Brant Van Roekel? Second touchdown of the season for him, 7-7 at the break. After racking up 180 yards rushing in the first half, SDSU gets that running game rolling again in the third. Isaac Wallace, 47 of his 102 yards for the day, and the Jacks climb back on top. Didn't stay there for long, though. South Dakota responds on its ensuing possession. Chris Strevler hooks up with Dakari Allen for an 8-yard score, and it's 14 apiece. Jacks, though, answer the answer. Christian keeps it again. This time he hangs on, 20 yards for the touchdown. SDSU up 21-14 after 3. Yotes draw even again early in the fourth. Strevler calls his own number on the QB keeper, and it's 21-all. Next play from scrimmage, momentum officially changes hands. Christian's pass tipped right into the arms of Alex Gray. Second INT of the year for him, and South Dakota in business at the SDSU 38. That led to a 32-yard field goal attempt, but Miles Bergner, who hadn't missed inside 40 all year long, pushes it wide right, and the game stays tied at 21. SDSU would capitalize on that. Christian drives the Jacks 80 yards in 10 plays, capping it off with his second rushing touchdown of the day. And that would do it. South Dakota State holds off South Dakota from there, edging the Coyotes for their 8th straight win in the series, 28-21. The final didn't show up on the scoreboard, but the Jacks dominated the box score in this one. They outgained the Coyotes 630 to 353. 65% of that came on the ground.
It's just tough. I mean, you can sit here and play the what-if game on, starting at that first fourth down, and we sneak it and I don't get it. So, you can go back there and question everything.
Bob Nielsen may be new to the South Dakota Showdown series, but it took just one game for him to develop an appreciation for everything it stands for. We'll cover that and more with the Coyotes head coach when we come back.
Coyote Corner on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Dakota Land Honda, and your Core Trust Bank.
South Dakota fought until the final whistle in Brookings on Saturday, but came up just a little short on the scoreboard. Final score, once again, 28-21 in favor of South Dakota State. That was the Coyotes' third straight one-score loss. And here now to make sense of all of it is South Dakota head coach Bob Nielsen. Bob, before we get into the analysis of what went down on the field, just want to get your thoughts on the rivalry itself and all this game means outside of the standings. So this was your first experience with USD-SDSU. Did it live up to the hype for you?
Well, it was a great crowd, great atmosphere for a football game, and certainly you can tell it's a game that means a lot to people more than just the ones playing in the game, and those kinds of games are always fun to play in.
All right, well, from a football standpoint, you knew what you were going to get in the 11th-ranked Jackrabbits, and when we talked last week, you said one of the most important things for you in this football game was going to be finishing drives, and you had a chance to do that on your very first possession of the day, but we saw what had been a pretty good drive going come to an end with Chris Strevler getting stopped on 4th and inches, but my question is, did he really get stopped?
I don't think so. I think we got a bad spot. It's unfortunate that when you have replay in a game that they can't get something right. But that was the call that they made, and we had to live with it. And unfortunately, that was an opportunity to put some points on the board that we didn't take advantage of.
And to add insult to injury, SDSU, of course, follows that up by marching 65 yards in 5 plays to take a 7-0 lead. Now, Jake Winicky accounted for 40 of those yards on that drive, but that was the most we heard out of him all day. In fact, he and Dallas Goddard, two of the top playmakers in the FCS football, not to mention the Valley, combined for just 5 catches, 67 yards on the day. Pretty pedestrian numbers, especially by their standards. So what did you do coverage-wise to slow them down?
Well, we had to play coverage a lot, and when you do that, you create opportunities for teams to match you in the box and run the football, and that's what South Dakota State chose to do. And we took away a couple of weapons, but good teams find a way to attack you when you do that, and we struggled containing the run all day.
And it seemed like sometimes, though, you were in position to get them stopped and some tackling one-on-one situations. You just didn't win those battles.
Yeah, the scheme that we're playing is going to create some one-on-one situations, and you got to make those plays. We had opportunities, I think, to get them off the field a time or two, or take what ended up being a 10, 15-yard run and make it a 4 or 5-yard run. And those are the kind of plays that we're going to have to make to try to defend the entire field, sideline to sideline, against South Dakota State and with what they do offensively.
Well, NDSU did finish the first half with 342 yards of total offense, but they didn't have a whole lot to show for it. The good news was your defense made enough plays to limit the damage, and after Brant Van Roekel's touchdown catch toward the end of the half, you went into the break tied at 7 apiece. So all things considered, how'd you feel with where things were at that point?
Well, we felt good being in the game. Defense rose up a couple of times, forced long field goal attempts, and obviously forced a turnover there to be able to keep them out of the end zone in a drive where they had the ball deep.
After a back-and-forth third quarter, down 7 going to the fourth, but a big sequence to start that frame. After Strevler tied things up at 21 with the touchdown run, you get the ball right back on that interception from Alex Gray. You're in great field position, chance to take the lead, but we all know what happened from there. You get a 32-yard field goal attempt. Miles hadn't missed from inside of 40 all year, but he pushes it right. So what exactly went wrong there?
I'm not sure. Obviously, a lot of wind during the afternoon. He pushed the ball, which is I think that's a field goal he makes 9 out of 10 times, maybe even more than that.
Yeah.
But that one would have put us in the lead, and certainly would have been interesting to get the lead and see what kind of pressure that would have put on them.
Yeah, it might have changed things, at least how things were approached down the stretch there. And it did prove costly because SDSU takes the ball, goes 80 yards for what proves to be the game-winning score. Now, on the surface, Bob, it's a 7-point loss on the road against the number 11 team in the country. But I thought you said something interesting after the game about the culture that you're trying to create here at South Dakota, and I found it interesting. Can you just reiterate that message?
Well, what I told our team after the game in the locker room and talked about it in the press conference is, playing close is not our goal. Whether we're playing the number 1 team in the country or not, our goal is going to be to win here, and we want to build a culture where playing those kinds of teams is going to be something that we want to be able to do week in, week out, and we want to be able to come away with a win.
Well, you've done that some this year, and in all your wins decided by 3 points. Unfortunately, you've been involved in a lot of those games, and they haven't all gone your way, but that's part of the process, right, in building a program.
Our team's played very competitively against a lot of high-quality teams. Like to have a couple more wins in our back pocket, but that's not the case. So we've got to close it out this week with a great performance.
All right, Bob. Well, again, as always, thanks so much for your time. We're going to check back in with you in a bit, but first, going to find out what Andre Fields has to say about what he saw against South Dakota State. Saturday storylines coming up next. Well, Bob Nielsen and company have already put the Jackrabbits in their rearview mirror, but before we follow suit, Andre Fields wants a chance to weigh in on the Coyotes' loss to arch rival South Dakota State. Andre, Coach Nielsen has made it very clear how he feels about looking for a silver lining in games like this, but you know what? We're going to do it anyway, and if there is one, it's that this game was competitive in Brookings, which is something we haven't seen since the series resumed in 2012. And despite all of the offense, all the yards that South Dakota surrendered in this football game, they still had a chance to win. But the bottom line is, when you're playing a team of this caliber on the road, rival or not, You have to cash in on the chances you get, and the Coyotes were simply just not able to do enough of that on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree, Jay. They had their opportunities. There were several times during the game where they had plays that they had to make. And regardless of the opponent, those are the situations where you have to execute if you expect to win on the road in the Missouri Valley Conference. They couldn't pull those plays off, and that was the difference.
And that was across the board, offense, defense, special teams. In one way, shape, or form, all three phases were affected by that.
I agree. And I mean, we can point out specific plays in general where they had to make that play, they couldn't make the play, and that one or two plays leads to a 7-point loss.
Yeah, well, the biggest or most crucial miscue of the day, in my mind anyway, was Miles Bergner's missed 32-yard field goal, which would have given the Coyotes a lead early in the fourth quarter. It would have been interesting to see how things might have been different, Andre, because if he makes that, suddenly there's a lot more pressure on SDSU, trailing at home against USD in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and knowing what USD has done late in games, that would have put a lot of pressure on their coaching staff to call the game a bit differently. Now you have to put yourself in position to get in field goal range or to get a touchdown. That, of course, changes the way you run things. Certain things could happen. You never know what might have been at that point in the game had he made the kick.
Easy for us to say that now,
Exactly.
right? I mean, well, just to give some perspective on how good Miles has been from that distance, leading up to that kick, Bergner had made 29 of his previous 31 attempts, including his first 9 this season inside 40 yards. He's 82% on those attempts for his career. He's been about as automatic as you can expect any college kicker to be from that distance.
Yeah.
Sometimes things just happen, right?
Exactly. And he's been so automatic that we fully expect him to make that kick. We expect him to make every single kick when he steps out.
Felt like an extra point for a guy like Miles, that's for sure. All right, well, finally, South Dakota forced to kind of pick its poison defensively on Saturday. That's a credit to the Jackrabbit offense. They chose to try and limit the damage inflicted by SDSU's passing game playmakers, Jake Winicki and Dallas Goddard, and they definitely did that. They held those two guys to a combined 5 catches for 67 yards, but it ended up hurting them on the ground as the Jackrabbits took advantage of a depleted front seven to the tune of 415 yards rushing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, depleted, yes, they were missing some key players defensively, South Dakota was, but good credit to South Dakota State because they were able to execute on the ground enough that the passing game didn't play a factor in this. I think we all thought that they would want to try to air it out, but once they saw that they had things moving on the ground, got to stay with it. South Dakota couldn't make the adjustment. That was the difference there. They couldn't make the adjustment, and if they did, it just didn't execute the adjustments well enough, and South Dakota State was able to control the clock, the ball, and ultimately the game.
And I think you gotta hang some of it on execution because there were times there when the Coyotes had a chance to get the running back before he got to the second level, and they just couldn't complete the tackles.
Yeah, or to get Taron Christian. You know, there were a few times when they would have some shots at him in the backfield, or maybe there were a few plays where he held the ball and kept it instead of handing it off at the right time when Coyotes did have the other guy bottled up. So, like you said, execution on both sides.
All right, well, that is it for Saturday's storylines. Thanks, Andre.
Absolutely.
See you back here next week. All right, well, things aren't going to get any easier this week as the Coyotes get set to wrap up the 2016 season against North Dakota State. We'll preview this week's battle with the Bison after this. Well, reality has set in for South Dakota. With Saturday's loss to SDSU, the Coyotes have been officially eliminated from postseason consideration. And while that is disappointing, Bob Nielsen says the opportunity to close the 2016 season against 5-time defending national champion North Dakota State still holds plenty of value.
Great way to send off a group of seniors that have been an important part of this program's transition into Division I. And so from a standpoint of taking another step forward as a program, it's a big game and an opportunity for us to demonstrate the direction that we're going.
Accomplishing that will certainly require a much better effort against the run. A week after struggling mightily in that department, the Coyotes are now preparing to face a team that does it about as well as anyone in the country. Bison averaged 227 yards per game on the ground, which is good enough for second in the Valley and 14th in the FCS.
This is a week where we've got to do a better job of containing the running game and getting their offense off the field at critical times. And it still goes back to offensively, we've got to control the football when we have opportunities.
South Dakota, which shocked NDSU 24-21 in Fargo last season, will look to recapture that magic on Saturday afternoon in Vermillion. The Bison, by the way, have not lost consecutive meetings against the same opponent since Illinois State, UNI, and Missouri State all beat them in back-to-back seasons between 2009 and 2010. Well, South Dakota has a brand new conference championship. We'll recap the Coyote volleyball team's banner-clinching victories next.
Coyote Corner on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Dakota Land Honda, and your Core Trust Bank.
And welcome back. Well, an already special season had a chance to get even sweeter for South Dakota volleyball. Leanne Williamson's squad had already secured the best start at the Division I level and its best start in conference play. But with 2 wins to close the regular season, the Coyotes would also clinch at least a share of their first Summit League championship. Up first, the then first place Denver Pioneers. This one would go the duration, but it was the Coyotes who rallied behind senior Audrey Reig, whose career best 24th kill of the night clinched the team's 5-set victory. South Dakota also got a big night out of sophomore libero Lauren Madison, who delivered a career-high 27 digs to help USD avenge an earlier 3-0 loss to the Pioneers. With that, South Dakota moved into a first-place tie with Denver heading into Saturday's regular season finale. The opponent for that one would be arch-rival South Dakota State. It was senior day for the Coyotes, but it was freshman Elizabeth Lotion who got the team rolling against the Jacks. She tallied a team-high 14 kills, but those seniors, Reig and Brown, played a big role too, chipping in 10 and 8 kills, respectively. South Dakota earns a share of its first ever Summit League title with a sweep of SDSU. The Coyotes are the 2 seed for this week's conference tournament, which will be played in Denver. They'll take on the winner of NDSU IUPUI this Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Just 7 months after celebrating its greatest achievement, the South Dakota women's basketball team prepared to officially turn the page. Williams, Seacamp, Stewart, along with several other key contributors from that WNIT championship run, have moved on, leaving the program in the hands of a new group of Coyotes. Friday, Dawn Plitzawhite and company made their debut together in Sioux Falls. To the Sanford Pentagon we go. One of those new Coyotes, Kira Duffy, gets things started for USD, the first of 19 points for the freshman. Cougars matching the Coyotes step for step early. Sydney Bauman from just inside the arc. SIUE down just 1 after 1. Late first half now, Allison Arns connects for 3 of her 12 first half points. That gives the Yotes a 30-25 halftime lead. South Dakota starts to pull away in the third. J.C. Bradley drops the triple. She finished with 16, part of a 20-6 run that resulted in a 19-point lead. The Cougars would claw their way back, though, to make things close toward the end. But the story of the night, Allison Arns, the sophomore, goes for a career-high 28 points on 9 of 14 shooting to lead South Dakota to a 75-68 victory. Fast forward to Sunday now, South Dakota hosting Stephen F. Austin in the first official basketball game inside the Sanford Coyote Sports Center. But I tell you what, the bells and whistles didn't faze the Lady Jacks early on. They drained 6 of their first 7 three-point attempts to build a 24-19 lead after 1. Visitors may have started the half strong, but the Coyotes closed it strong. Allison Arns gets the steal and the score. She had 21. South Dakota goes from down 8 to up 7 at the half. Coach P's team picks up right where they left off in the third. The run reaches 22-2 early in that quarter with a variety of players contributing. Abby Fogg was one of them. She finished with a career-high 18 on 8 of 10 shooting. SFA stayed scrappy, cutting a 16-point deficit down to as little as 4 down the stretch, but the Coyotes close the deal again. They hold on for an 80-74 win to go to 2-0 on the young season. Arns again leading the way. She averaged 24.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals on the weekend. And that was good enough to earn her Summit League Player of the Week honors for the first time in her career. Yotes back in action Thursday night at Arkansas. Meanwhile, for the first time in the Division I era, the Coyote men opened their season with a win as they go to Des Moines and beat Drake 79-74. Trey Birch-Manning recorded game highs of 24 points and 11 rebounds in his South Dakota debut, while fellow transfer Matt Mooney chipped in 21, including a couple of key three-pointers down the stretch as the Coyotes snap a 10-game losing streak against the Bulldogs. From there, it was back to Vermillion, where Craig Smith's team tipped off the home portion of its schedule against Bowling Green. After trailing by as many as 7 early, Trey Dickerson helps spark a turnaround, gets the bump and the bucket. Coyotes closed the half at a 10-0 run and led by 6 at the break. Or USD to start the second. Yotes scored 9 of the first 11, 5 of those coming from Tyler Flack, as South Dakota stretches the lead to as many as 13. Back comes Bowling Green, though. Antoine Lillard with the putback plus the foul. The Falcons turned 15 offensive rebounds into 23 second chance points. Later, game tied at 55 now. Carlton Hurst. That's what they call a statement slam. Hurst scored 13 on the night. Bowling Green overcame that dunk to build a 5-point lead with just over 5 minutes to go, but just as he did on Friday, Matt Mooney delivered late. Back-to-back buckets for the sophomore gives the Coyotes a 71-69 lead, and they would never trail again. South Dakota makes enough free throws down the stretch to seal its first SCSC victory, 78-72. And it was a balanced effort. 6 Coyotes scored at least 9 points in this one, with Birch-Manning leading the way once again with his second consecutive double-double. All right, that is our time for this week. For Kelly Stewart, I'm Jay Elsen. We'll see you back here next Wednesday night for another episode of Coyote Corner.